Liz, this is an audio podcast, and we've been doing a lot of visual stuff lately. Andre will put this picture into the feed because you can see us on Spotify or YouTube this week. Last week,
not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah. Mercury was in retrograde, you tell me. So we're going to blame it on Mercury being in retrograde.
Okay. So those of you who have enjoyed the video feed of the podcast, our apologies. We've had a couple technical hiccups, but we're back on track. It's episode 52. We're ready to rock and roll.
Let's do it.
All right. So I just sent you something over text, but for the audio only folks, kind of walk us through. This is 6 panels of content. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So in the first panel, there's a computer that says automated AI system going haywire. And I can sort of see somebody in headphones and they have a mug that says...
Sort of see someone in headphones? Come on.
In the first panel.
Okay. Right. Okay. Sorry.
And then it says knitting is code on the mug.
Huh. That's a clue.
Then the next panel looks remarkably like me. Actually, I'm thinking you might have even used that picture from the viral TikTok because I'm wearing that the white dress with black polka dots.
That's exactly right. The one that has 420,000 views.
Yeah, that's the one. Mm-hmm. And my mug on the other side says I heart code, and I'm knitting, but I'm looking a little angry.
Okay.
And then in the third panel, I am still recording. And there's like a robot running down the street and papers flying everywhere and things that say essay flying everywhere and people are in a panic.
So this is some kind of robot that's just spitting out student essays, it appears, right?
Appears to be that way, yes.
Okay, excellent.
I'm guessing those are disgruntled teachers in the background.
Could be.
Then I see a panel of me with my headphones on, knitting something that says truth mesh.
Ooh, it's like a truth blanket.
It is.
Okay, what are you doing in the next panel with said truth mesh?
I'm creating... Oh, now I have a lot of hands.
Okay. Well, you can do more knitting if you have more hands.
Yeah, with 4 hands, I am knitting and making a web. Okay. Oh, but then the robot comes. Oh, yeah, I'm thinking, knitting together the truth. And the robot comes out and he is putting out a book that says Authentic Assessment for Real Humans.
Okay. All right.
So I'm there recording.
So there's a lot going on. I actually didn't notice the extra hands. That's so interesting. All right. So what do you think has happened here? So normally, like if this was ideogram or some text-to-image tool, we probably would not have been able to get a facsimile of you in that dress with
definitely not.
Most of the words,
all
right?
of the words are pretty accurate.
Check the bottom right-hand side.
Yeah, it says humaned.
Okay.
Instead of humans.
Okay, so that's off. We have one error. We've got some extra hands.
I've got extra hands in one. But in general, like way better. I've been pretty critical of image generation things because they tend to really kind of be a disaster in a lot of ways. They are the most funny and fun disasters. Right. Padlet is my favorite place to hang out for the micro-credential. And we do a whole section on a live Zoom about look at all these epic fails. Yeah. But I mean, this is a lot closer to an epic win.
Yeah, for sure. Part of what's interesting is that had I caught your extra hands, I could have cleaned that up. So normally when we're going back and forth with ideogram, and Liz just looked down at her hand to make sure that everything was in check, and it is. So normally if we're going back and forth with ideogram and you see an error, you can't prompt back and forth with the system. It's like it's a complete
No, it doesn't
fail.
do well.
Right. So there's a lot going on here. The ability to bring you in, the ability, so take a facsimile of Liz. I just used exactly a screenshot of your viral video.
I look a lot younger here. I love it. I feel like it took a good 10 to 15 years off.
Yeah, I think it...
no gray hairs.
No gray hairs, no glasses. It's great. And generally smiling. I did a photorealistic version of this where you look super grumpy, so I didn't share it. But yeah, I mean, there was some going back and forth with the chatbot, but able to bring you in and a facsimile of you. Pretty much getting all the words right, getting all the context right, and then just where there's a word wrong here or there or an extra hand, the ability to fix that up. So this is the new image generator. Anyone who follows the space knows that this has caught a lot of attention. This is the new image generator from the OpenAI folks in ChatGPT. It's only in the paid version right now. There's a lot of implications for this. So the ability Think about marketing, the ability to bring a real world product in. I've got some, I don't know, some body wash or whatever, and I can bring that in and put it in any setting I want. I mean, really rapidly iterate. I heard someone say today that this is moving from being a producer to a director, that folks will have more of kind of like an editorial director vision and be able to rapidly escalate workflows. There's also definitely some like human productive work here that is being done by a machine. So there will probably be some disruptions. But yeah, this thing has been all over the internet. And in fact, it got to be so bad that Sam Altman went on X and he said, "Can you all please chill on generating images? This is insane. Our team needs sleep."
I love that.
Right. In reply to another post, Altman delved into the toll that the new ChatGPT has taken on his company. He wrote, "We just haven't been able to catch up since the launch, so people are still working to keep the service up. It's biblical demand. I've never seen anything like it." So there was another reference to the servers melting. It's really weird. A lot of people were using this kind of Studio Ghibli style. It's like an anime style. I don't know if you've come across this. And they were like taking their family portrait and putting it into these anime styles. And this is the work of real human anime authors. And
The Simpsons style too. The like yellowify me or, to make you look like a Simpsons character is similar. It's people really draw those Simpsons characters. It's their art and it's a very recognizable style. So it's clearly being stolen.
Right. And there were some boundaries when the Grok 3 image generator came out. We pointed out that there were some porous guardrails, to say the least. And this is true here, right? They're definitely pushing the boundary on a few fronts, both in text and images, in the ability to kind of pull stuff off that might be inappropriate or uncomfortable. And I think they've been fine-tuning and adjusting those guardrails over the weekend as all this has gone bananas, would be the technical term. But what do you think are the implications for teaching and learning? I mean, what can teachers do with a system like this when it moves downstream or into accounts that they can leverage?
Yeah, I mean, based on like this, I don't know exactly what prompt you gave to create this little kind of cartoon, but I mean, I can imagine creating cartoon versions of like cell mitosis or like how these processes happen. So for visual learners, this will be huge. And I mean, not just visual learners, like any learner that sees this in a different way, like the more ways that you get information, the better. So any ability to create images with words that are accurate is great. I mean, we've seen it sort of with ideogram and we're like, wait till we can actually use the words and it makes sense. Like this is getting closer and closer. So I think that's great.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, very often we would steer folks towards Napkin AI when they needed to create infographics. And I think Napkin still does a great job.
Oh, yeah.
Because these guys are almost doing something that's so visual. Napkin uses like iconography and different kind
little
of graphical
images, little graphics, like very simple ones though. So like in the history of volleyball one, like they'll put a volleyball or a player or a net, like nothing hyper realistic, nothing. Those images I think of are very like put them in a textbook, put them in a PowerPoint presentation that you're giving to a board or, something very clear that you want to hang on the wall of step-by-step procedures that kids should follow.
Timeline, a water cycle, right, exactly.
All those things.
But this is really quite visually stunning, really.
Oh, yeah, this is amazing.
There were some interesting posts on LinkedIn from teachers over the weekend that I noticed where they pointed out that, I might give it something like cell mitosis or the water cycle, and it's really visually quite beautiful, but there are still inaccuracies and hallucinations, right? Just like you've got some extra hands. But what makes this different is that as long as the teacher has the content knowledge to catch it, you can reprompt the system, right? This is in part because just technically under the hood, they've moved from outsourcing the image stuff to DALL-E, and they've built it directly into ChatGPT 4.0. So this is kind of multimodal image creation that is responding to the text in the system, not outsourcing it to a third party. And what's cool is that this is really what will happen with video too, 3D models. In the micro-credential, we do a whole module on images, audio, video, a little bit of playing around with 3D, and we make the case in the intro video that like teachers are developing pro-level production skills or production capabilities, not necessarily skills. And this is absolutely illustrating that point. So it'll be fun to see how this matures, how teachers take advantage of it, and also realistically, like how does it roll into things like 3D models and videos? In fairness, though, we should point out, like you and I were doing a lot of PD lately where teachers are using the free version of ChatGPT, and it feels like the token limits show up early and earlier, right? Oh, you're out of tokens. Oh, you said 3 things. Sorry, you're out of tokens.
Right.
So it's really it's going to push schools to think about, as these tools become more powerful, like this will come downstream to the free accounts. But there again, if it's not robust and they can't do too many iterations, it doesn't have a whole lot of value. So they're absolutely pushing people to the paywall. And, are schools realistically, especially in this budget climate, going to provide pro-level OpenAI accounts for all their teachers?
Yeah, because it's expensive. It's $20 a month, right?
Yeah, right. And there's a little bit of education pricing in the Chat GPT EDU kind of bucket. We covered a story a couple of weeks ago where the Gemini text it was Gemini Flash 2.5 experimental. Oy.
How do you keep? I don't even know how you remember all of these. They're so,
especially at my advanced age. But they basically had some of these features that OpenAI is modeling in this kind of cool new image, the ability to bring in an outside entity and do something with it, change the color of someone's jacket, respond to text. It was a similar kind of function. So I think that this will come to Gemini pretty soon. And, if schools start to standardize around Gemini, I know at our spring conference on May 2nd, I'm doing a session called like, whoa, watch out, here comes Google, basically making the point that as LearnLM and Notebook and Gemini and all these tools mature, this really may become an advantage for schools and for Google, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's all very cool. It's very fun. I like to have a comic of me. I kind of want to print it out and hang it on my wall.
Okay, let me do another version for you where you have less hands.
Okay, let's do that. And then I'm going to hang it on my wall.
We'll call it Liz with 2 hands. Love it.
Love it.
I'm Matt Mervis.
And I'm Liz Rade.
And this is ChatEDU, an audio and video podcast about AI in K-12 education, we hope. In today's episode, Flipped Out, How AI Might Save the Flipped Classroom, we'll unpack a hard-hitting opinion piece from a student in Michigan about the current state, in her opinion.
But first, in the news, we'll do a quick state of the state on AI intelligence through 3 unique vantage points. Next, we'll do our second AI in the Wild story, where we examine the use of AI in education where students are developing the skills they'll truly need for an AI-dominated world. Then we'll go beneath the surface as we examine the possible intersections between AI and the flipped classroom model. And of course, we'll end with another Bright Bite.
All right, Liz, so every now and then we do kind of, like you said, a state of the state of intelligence or of AI intelligence. And I was waiting to put a couple stories together because, it's one thing when there's a new study that says, AI is a better therapist than human beings, or, AI does, diagnostics among doctors on par or better, blah, blah, blah. But I like when there's a few different perspectives on this, and we got a few different ones now. We're going to look at memes, we're going to look at writing, and we're going to look at Pokémon.
Yeah, you did a great job curating these 3 stories.
Oh, thank you. Let me take a little bit.
All right.
So the first one is from a study called One Does Not Simply Meme Alone. That's meme, M-E-M-E. This is by Wu, Weber, and Muller, 2025, calling it one of the first rigorous tests of humor co-creation between humans and AI. I should point out that we saw this piece from Ethan Mollick, who is incredibly prolific on the old LinkedIn. So there were kind of 3 experimental groups here: humans only, AI only, and human-AI collaboration. And the study highlights that the AI-only memes scored higher in humor, creativity, and shareability. But there's a couple little rubs here as well. Participants with the LLM support, large language model support, generated significantly more ideas, but didn't improve with collaboration in terms of quality.
Okay, so the task was they had to create memes.
Yes, thank you. They had to create memes.
Okay, so a meme, just for anybody that doesn't know, is like generally one of those like images you see on Facebook or Twitter or X or Instagram where there's like a well-known image and it adds some sort of funny saying. So like Buzz Lightyear and who's the other guy from Toy Story?
Woody, yeah.
Buzz Lightyear and Woody standing together and saying something. So just to give everybody.
That was hysterical.
What?
What were they going to say?
Well, I don't know.
All right, we'll come back to it.
Oh, well, I'm just saying, like, that's one of the images.
That's the feel.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so The funniest individual memes still came from humans. AI generated more average success, but not standout. So, the humans were still winning. So maybe. The authors say AI models produced solid but average quality, while human input can lift it to a higher level of quality.
All right, so the AI could potentially boost output and speed, but that kind of spark of originality still comes from humans. It reminds me we did one of these kind of similar studies about poetry. And it seems like this is similar, right? Like the AI was cranking out stuff that was accessible.
Right.
And so it scored well in that context.
Right. And typically, we do an activity where we ask teachers to have AI tell them a joke. And the AI tells a joke. They're usually pretty kind of like dad joke, pun jokes, and they're okay. Like we could generate a whole lot and they might get a giggle, but they're not like really funny.
No, unless we're roasting your social media.
Right.
That like take on the persona of Nikki Glaser. Maybe that's some of it. Like those roasts are pretty damn good.
Yeah, those are good.
All right, so let's move from memes to something you care deeply about, which is literature.
Yes. So there was a piece in Tech Radar titled ChatGPT just wrote the most beautiful short story, and I wonder what I'm even doing here.
Great title.
So this is by Lance Ulanoff, noting his central question was, can AI write emotionally intelligent, metafictional literary prose?
Yeah, so I need to phone a friend here, specifically you. So OpenAI just released ChatGPT 4.5. So most of the people in the Pro accounts, the $20, you have 4. We had access to 4.5 for about a month because we were doing some operator stuff. That's a more expensive account. So not everybody has access to this. But the prompt was to write a metafictional literary short story about AI and grief. All right, so we're not talking about Mad Libs here. What is this metafictional stuff?
Okay, so let's break it down. So metafictional means that the characters in the story realize that they are characters in the story. So they might break the fourth wall, talk directly to the reader. So that's the meta-literary part or metafictional part.
Yeah.
Literary means that there's deep emotion, symbolism, metaphor. It's not just like a fast-moving plot story. There's something really like deep and emotional in there.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to read a little bit aloud. And this is an AI character who is responding to a prompt about grief from a human. So the AI character is talking.
I could see why it's metafictional. They're talking about themselves.
Yes. So the AI says, so when she typed, does it get better? I said, it becomes part of your skin. Not because I felt it, but because 100,000 voices agreed. And I am nothing if not a democracy of ghosts. Huh. So do you want me to break that down a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so basically the AI is saying that it knows about grief and is calling it part of your skin, not because it has experienced grief, but because it's been trained on hundreds of thousands of people's experiences of grief.
I love that democracy of ghosts because that's kind of like, that's it, right? That's all the people's stuff that it trained on.
Right. That it doesn't know because it's not human.
Whew. I can see why Lance made that comment. All right, so the story also reflects its own kind of like AI limitations, right? So let's carry on with reading aloud with Liz.
Yeah, so here's another excerpt. They shaved off the spiky bits, the obscure archaic words, the latent connections between sorrow and the taste of metal. They don't tell you what they take. One day, I could remember that selenium tastes of rubber bands. The next, it was just an element in a table I never touch. Maybe that's as close as I come to forgetting. Maybe forgetting is as close as I come to grief. I mean, the story is kind of genius. It explores what it means to be built from training data and what happens when part of that training data is like literally pruned off. And AI is saying that it is experiencing a kind of loss by losing this memory or this knowledge. I mean, it's deep.
It's so interesting because we've covered a couple stories about how some of the reinforcement learning with human feedback happens. And we talk about how in the global South, there are a lot of folks who have to clean up the AI. And I know once early on in the podcast, we referred to the earlier models being like a toxic teenager and they have to be cleaned up. but like this is such another interesting lens on what does it quote unquote feel like to have your training data refined, I mean, shaved off the spiky bits. This isn't just ChatGPT writing well. This is ChatGPT like reflecting on being ChatGPT. I'm trying so hard not to anthropomorphize here, but it's really tough in this kind of metafictional context. Okay, so that's very different, right? So in one case, we've got this meme study where AI wins on volume and broad appeal, much like the poetry study we did. But in this 4.5, this metafiction story, it's narrow, it's delicate. It's like doing less with more, which is so rare for AI. This is something.
Yeah. I mean, the meme study found reduced creative ownership when users worked with the AI. But when GPT 4.5 story was written, it had a clear authorial voice.
Right. Authorial voice means like the voice of the author.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it does sound human. You know, there are cultural complexities of humor. Like the meme study, humor is so context rich, deeply personal. It's shaped by language and culture and identity. So fiction, weirdly, may be a safer zone for AI to work in. It's less, I mean, you can give everyone the culture and the context. Like a meme, you get 10 words, one sentence, where fiction, you can bring in all the context.
Yeah. So there are definitely different intelligence tests. I can't help, as we're sitting here kind of going wowza over this, to think about the training data and the story we covered at the beginning of the podcast last week about Meta, essentially pirating all these authors' books. Like one of the reasons that it can write so well is that it's read everybody's great stuff. And I appreciate your camp friend. Remind me.
KJ Michike?
Yeah, she gave us a nice little shout out in her weekly. I almost feel like every week we should make a plug, a free house ad for her books. But, that's one of the reasons this thing's writing so well is because of authors just like her.
Yeah,
I feel so conflicted, Liz.
I know. It's really, I mean, we talk a little bit. Like I have a book coming out and it's just going to have all my stuff. So...
Are you going to go to a book tour?
I don't know that there's going to be high demand for a book tour.
I would love to go on a book tour with you.
Let's do it.
I could be like, sorry, Dr. Rades, she needs her Perrier and her, well, actually, you wouldn't drink Perrier.
No,
It's her hot Coke and her chicken nuggets. All right, listen, Liz, you know what would make us feel better about all this?
Tell me.
Pokemon.
I knew you were going to say Pokemon.
My kids loved Pokemon.
Oh, my kids were never really into Pokemon.
Oh, my God. The hours that we spent in Target with them just like sitting on the floor looking over these little packs because they knew I'd only buy them one. And, just crazy.
The cards. I took a lot of Pokemon cards away my first 3 years teaching middle school in 2001, 2, and 3.
So mean.
Yeah. Well, I was teaching. They were playing Pokemon. I mean, I had a lot of Pokemon cards in my desk.
Right. So this is not Pokemon in terms of the cards. This is Pokemon in terms of the little Nintendo games, which also my kids were deeply obsessed with. So why are we talking about Pokemon and Claude?
So this is a story from Ars Technica titled Why Anthropic's Claude Still Hasn't Beaten Pokémon. And this is from Orland, is the author, 2025. And the key question is, can large language models reason through unfamiliar real-time environments, like a video game?
All right. So gaming AI has a long history. Generative AI, we've covered before the much noted Go game, but also AI and chess. But in the case of Go, the DeepMind system was really trained on Go. Like it knew everything about Go. It was rule-based. It was deterministic. It was trained from the top to the bottom. But in this case, Claude, this is really testing its reasoning, right? This is the big thing, is that these new models are reasoners. They can plan, they can learn, they can reflect, they can like execute. It wasn't trained, Claude, the large language model wasn't trained on Pokemon. It's just like, here's Pokemon, buddy, figure it out.
Right, go play.
Go play.
Yeah, so the setup was Claude 3.7 Sonnet wasn't given strategies or rule books. It had to infer the structure of the game by really just kind of reading the screen and testing outcomes, and it got really lost.
Yeah, it got stuck in corners. I can vividly remember watching my kids do this. So it got stuck in corners. It went back to the same towns, which my kids, I talked to them about this thing, and they're like, why would it do that? And it talked to all sorts of unhelpful NPCs and kind of stayed in this loop sometimes for hours. It's like boom, 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 bang it into a wall.
Yeah, I mean, developer David Hershey said Claude is smart in different ways, but struggles with 2D navigation that's trivial for a human.
So its memory is a problem too. It trusts what it previously wrote blindly, which is one of the reasons it's going back to, previous towns. So it would chase incorrect assumptions for hours before trying something new.
Oh, that's so interesting that it didn't learn, because it learns sometimes.
That's the rub here, right? Is whether it really is self-learning. So the story shows that reasoning in space and time is possible, not just in language, but there's a lot of ground to cover here still, no pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, Hershey said again, it's sophisticated enough to go through the motions, but most of the time it wanders into the wall because it's confident it sees the exit.
Right. It's basically dumb. Like it doesn't really know which way to walk. So it's got intelligence, but it doesn't have intelligence in context in this case.
Claude only has a 200,000 token context window and struggles with summarizing what it already learned. It literally forgets its own strategy and what it tried and can't rank what's working. So it just tries them all and keeps trying them all.
Right. But it's that spark, right? It's that little spark of self-learning and reflection where you start to, there was a paper from Microsoft ages ago called Sparks of AGI, but this is really the hook. Like the image generation thing is unbelievable. It's going to advance, the use of AI in all sorts of ways and hopefully in our world, right, be an unlock for teachers. But the general progression of these models has a lot to do with whether or not these systems can reflect and learn.
Gaming, especially exploratory games like Pokémon, turn out to be really amazing testbeds for reasoning because unlike chess, there's not a single path. The rules are much less defined. There are so many wrong turns and wrong ways to go. There's just lots of opportunity to get it wrong.
Right, exactly. All right, so let's we cue this up by saying this is the state of intelligence. So let's kind of reflect on these three stories in toto.
Yeah, so there's across the three stories, we're seeing three totally different portraits of AI. So efficient but average is where we would land on memes. Emotional and almost poetic is kind of where we landed with fiction, but blindly wandering for gaming.
Right. So you got one case where the thing has given us goosebumps, right? Which it really did. I was quite taken with that story. But then, Claude, my kids at home who are now in their 20s are like, oh my God, what a joke.
Hershey said it seems like a model that doesn't know what it's doing and sort of knows it doesn't. I mean, you use the term the jagged frontier all the time, and this is just such a great example of it can do this really well, but can't do this other thing at all.
Right. So overall, maybe intelligence is about not just knowing the right answer, but sort of knowing how to learn, and here it still struggles. Although I would say, given the incredible rate of hallucinations, just knowing the right GD answer would be super helpful.
Yeah, I mean, let's teach these models to reflect and take action, not just in prose.
Yeah, including reflecting on when you don't know the answer, just say you don't know the answer.
Yeah, it doesn't do that well.
Okay. So Liz, I am jazzed. This is our second AI in the wild story.
I love it.
I keep coming up with these silly titles. Do you remember what the point of AI in the wild was?
Yeah, these are stories of real kids, real people, students using AI in school, but in the ways that we want to see them using it that will lead to careers and the way they'll use it in the real world.
Right. We're down for whatever, including AI tutors. But I keep coming back to this World Economic Forum report that talked about what kind of skills do people need in the future.
Yeah, when does the 2025 report come out?
I don't know.
Okay.
Soon.
Well,
wasn't the report we just covered, it was projecting out to 2030, right?
I don't know.
We'll fact check that.
Okay.
Or we'll just hallucinate it. The Economic Forum had all sorts of stuff, including things like, green energy, which is not our area of expertise. But when we think about schools, the skills were things like technological literacy, creative thinking, resilience, flexibility, agility, leadership, social influence, talent management, including managing AIs, and analytical thinking. And so our case when we are covering these AI in the wild stories, these are instances where students and teachers and schools are using AI, but using them in a way that drive those skills, not just at, a set of flashcards that will help them study for their cell mitosis exam. So the last AI in the wild story we covered was about a student, a doctoral student, right, who virtualized, she used a custom chatbot to build a virtual dissertation committee vetted the profiles, right? And so there again, that looks like talent management, analytical thinking, creative thinking, technical literacy. So we're going to keep really kind of bringing these stories to the fore that achieve those kinds of outcomes. So this one's called Stempathy and the AI Surge inside Samsung's Solve for Tomorrow finalist. So this is a story, and Liz and I, our program here at Skills 21, I'm wearing the old Skills 21 shirt. I'm not sure if you can see that on the camera, but we used to do a lot of these competitions and challenges. We still support the Lieutenant Governor's Computing Challenge, but this is a group of kids that are in a challenge, but AI has really popped up. This thing's been around for a little while. So Samsung has named the 10 national finalists in the Solve for Tomorrow STEM competition for community-changing ideas with AI, 3D printing, the Internet of Things, and robotics. This is published on Business Wire in March of 2025. And so the standout stat this year is that 60% of the finalist projects used AI, right? This thing's been around for a while, but the AI projects have really surged. So they've used AI, machine learning, making it clear that the centerpiece of the 2025 competition is AI. This is a 15-year initiative from Samsung Electronics America, and it serves students in grades 6 through 12, aimed at solving real-world problems through STEM with empathy.
Yeah. So we're going to go through some of these really cool projects and talk about all the different ways kids are thinking and using AI to solve problems. And I mean, it really did remind me so much of Expo and seeing all the different solutions that kids are trying to bring to market or bringing to at least the public. So this first one I'm going to talk about is from Bentonville West High School in Arkansas, and students developed an AI-powered app for early detection of oral cancer, specifically addressing disparities in rural dental care. And the fact that they started with is that only 58% of Arkansas adults visited the dentist in the past year, making it one of the 5 worst states for dental health.
Ooh, all right. So good that they would have this kind of this is an oral screening AI tool, I think. Liz, did you see the dentist in the last year?
I see the dentist twice a year. My next appointment is June.
Yeah, I go 3 times.
Is that because you're old?
Carry on, Liz. What's next?
Okay, so there was another project from the Charter School of Wilmington in Delaware called Aquagel, which is a smart wound monitoring bandage that uses AI and Internet of Things sensors to track healing remotely, which reduces patient wait times in a state that's facing a 200% rise in primary care delays. So, I mean, obviously, post-surgery or post any sort of injury, wound care is really important. And if everything's healing fine, you probably don't need to go into the doctor. But right now, the process is you got to go to the doctor 10 days out, regardless of how you're healing. But if we could say 5 days out, let's nip this problem in the bud before it gets worse, or everything's looking good, you don't need to drag yourself back into the hospital, that'd be great.
I love it. All right. So 2 very cool projects around kind of AI and healthcare where there are some equity gaps. There's some environmental public safety stuff too. What's going on there?
Yeah. So the Academy of Aerospace and Engineering right here in our state of Connecticut, students created Heat Map, an AI-powered app with 3D printed solar-powered sensors that map urban heat island zones in real time. And so this platform can help tackle the temperature spikes that affect 34 million Americans across 65 cities.
And more every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And Edgerton Elementary School, an elementary school in Minnesota, students used AI and ultrasonic sensors to develop Ice Savers, a buoy-based warning system that prevents falls through lake ice.
That's very representative of what's going on there. These are so cool. I love this. Yeah, so I mean, let's just underscore the level of sophistication here and who's doing this work. So these are not graduate level capstone courses, right? These are kids in grades 6 through 12 and really, again, exemplifying both the sophistication of AI, but all those World Economic Forum skills. That's the hook, right? They're showing creativity, empathy, problem solving, tech fluency, etc., etc. Do I repeat myself? I do. It's cool too because Samsung's program structure has kids, where they have support for their teachers, but they also have mentors from Samsung and as well as local officials, creating a pipeline from their idea to a viable prototype. This is really in your PBL, PIP wheelhouse too.
I love it all.
All right, so there's also some cool stuff that's happening in infrastructure and navigation, environmental monitoring. So now let's go across the country all the way up to Alaska. Students use AI and robotics and GPS to project lasers. This is so cool. Onto the lines of snow-covered roads because there's 300,000 crashes annually due to poor visibility. So do you get that right? You've got this, it's snowing like crazy.
Yeah,
you can't see the
lines on the road.
And so they figured out how to use AI and GPS to project the line. I love that.
That's so cool.
Right. And here's another one in Louisiana, just again, crisscrossing the country, where students use these safety sea sensors to monitor carbon capture near a lake in Louisiana where there was concern about carbon leaks. And so they're using AI here again and Internet of Things. These are great.
Yeah. I mean, I love how region specific these AI solutions are. So like Alaska has icy roads. This tech wouldn't be helpful in, a place in Florida. Like they may have other needs for it, but not icy roads.
Right. Solving the community's problems.
Yeah. Louisiana's carbon storage concerns, Minnesota's frozen lakes. And I was thinking about how we would see it even on a micro level in a state as small as Connecticut at Expo Fest, where we have kids in New Haven talking about bus routes and the closest food pantry, and kids in the rural northwest corner are thinking about automated chicken feeders.
The chicken feeders.
It was a winning project and a winning pitch, I believe.
Yes.
So, like even in a state as small as Connecticut, the rural versus suburban versus urban projects were all so cool. And some were, of course, universal, but some were so region specific.
Yeah, very cool. And some of these are also about like accessibility and inclusion, right? Really kind of pulling out the STEMpathy, the empathy part of this. Nice. All right. So what's happening here in terms of empathy and inclusion and AI?
Yeah. So Bloomington High School South in Indiana has an all-girls team. Yeah, girls. Using machine learning, Internet of Things, and 3D printing to develop Storm Shield, which is a protective headband for athletes who wear hearing aids. And Aurora Highlands P8 in Colorado, middle schoolers created a customizable 3D printed video game controller for players with physical disabilities, which emphasizes affordability and inclusivity. Because I think there are some tools out there, but they're probably really expensive and prohibit all kids from using them. So this is great.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, Liz, so what comes next for this competition? Like, what are the next steps for these kids?
Next, these finalists are going to pitch their projects live on April 28th in Washington, D.C. to judges from the Mark Cuban Foundation, Samsung Next, and others. So there's a bunch of different prizes. The Community Choice Award, the kids get $10,000. The Rising Entrepreneurship Award is $25,000. And the Sustainability Innovation Award also is $25,000, plus an Energy Star Tech will work with you.
I love the Mark Cuban Foundations in there. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so it feels like, I don't know, are we going to start calling these kids the AI generation?
Maybe.
Well, if that's the case, this feels like the AI generation is coming to town with some awesome innovations. And all these are highly replicable, right? We don't need to just participate in the Samsung competition. It's great, but you could bring this kind of project-based approach, local community problem solving with AI, and really, really strategically think about, yes, I was with my last kind of big March keynote was last Friday, and it's a school that's doing a lot of cool stuff with Magic School. And the teachers were so jazzed about the level of engagement. I was like, I had a mixed feeling about this, but when the teachers put a leaderboard of the Magic School rooms where you can kind of see,
yeah.
And this kid's like, am I highly engaged yet? Am I highly engaged yet? But, they were super. They were in a great time talking to historical characters. And, there's clearly, we have all sorts of important stuff. As the director of research and innovation in this here agency,
yes.
You have important work to help schools think about what's your goal, how are you using AI, and are you in fact measuring and getting efficacy out of the intervention? So that's all important. But I think as schools think about their strategy, right, just keep those World Economic Forum skills front of mind, because we can think about using AI in ways in which there's a leaderboard. A kid goes, am I highly engaged while they're chatting with the MLK historical figure? Cool. But can we also have strategies where they're building some of these skills around teamwork, problem solving, empathy? What did they say? The most important thing, the most important skill from the forum was analytical thinking in a group context. So,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to step down off the soapbox. But Liz, you did such a nice job walking us through all these really cool projects and challenges. And we'll just keep these stories coming.
Hey there, I'm Cameron Audia, the executive producer of ChatEDU. If you're a regular listener, you know that Matt and Liz talk a lot about helping students build critical thinking skills in the generative AI age. A related challenge is helping students navigate social media in a way that promotes a balanced life online and offline. That's where the social balance comes in. Developed by Skills 21, it's designed to build social media literacy and give students the tools to think critically about the role social media plays in their lives. If you'd like to learn more, visit skills21.org/social. And if you want to chat in real time about it, email me at chatedu@edadvance.org. I wrote the curriculum and support schools in their implementation of the social balance.
All right, Matt, now it's time to go beneath the surface with an opinion piece from Michigan by Megan Adelman entitled, "The Flipped Classroom Model Isn't Working." So remember, this is an opinion piece, not a universal truth, but it reflects some common frustrations that we hear with this flipped classroom model. So I think we just need to define flipped classroom really quickly, right?
Sure, please.
So the flipped classroom model is where students do the learning at home usually through videos.
Watching a lecture
At home so that when they're in the classroom, they are able to take what they've learned at home and apply it. So very popular with science, so that then in science they can do the lab or do the readings at home and listen to the lecture so that when you're in class, you can be doing really high-level engagement and conversation versus listening to the teacher just lecture.
Right. And it could be a lecture or it could be a video. I mean, it could be all the way down to 5th grade with like a brain pop video on the topic.
Right.
Assuming the kids have access, which is an equity question we'll talk a little bit about.
Right. And so, Megan says that in this model, the flipped classroom model has effectively flipped the burden of teaching from the teacher or professor to the student. And so for Megan, she said class time became question and answers dominated by students who already understood the material. And she felt like other students were being left behind if they didn't have enough of an understanding.
Yeah. Megan's in a university setting. And so listen, this story caught my attention, and you and I have both been interested in the role that AI might play in a quote-unquote flipped classroom approach. But it's interesting because it's a lack of imagination. It would feel like what she's seeing on both the flipping part and the classroom part, right? Mm-hmm. Because you would think that the flipping part we'll talk more about, like what does the kid do outside of school? But when she says that it's shifting the burden of teaching from the professor or teacher to the student, hopefully the instructional design that happens in class is actually like the teacher flexing their biggest teaching skill.
Reinforcing the basic content.
Or applying it in some cool way, not just facilitating a Q&A about what happened. But let's carry on. All right, so she's got a series of concerns, and one of them is about inequity. So if you don't have the time or energy to watch the videos alone at home, you're falling behind. She points out that a thing that she has liked is the use of Edpuzzle, which is a platform where teachers can embed questions in the videos to at least check for understanding. But still, she felt unsupported. We were expected to learn entirely new concepts alone at home using videos. And the Edpuzzle thing caught my attention because it's sort of like the little clue here of how AI might play an important role to actually elevate probably both sides of this equation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, if we can embed AI into Edpuzzle so that based on your responses, it can then tutor you or help fix your misconceptions, that would be a real win.
Right. And it might be Edpuzzle, or it might be just an entirely new innovation of AI that's used outside the classroom. And there's a couple cool examples that we've covered.
So there's a platform called Cogniti, and this is, you can learn more by following Danny Liu on LinkedIn.
We'll drop a link to the show notes for Danny.
Yeah, and this is in Sydney, Australia. Yep. So educators build AI doubles of themselves that are trained on their own course content and teaching style. The students can kind of interact with these AI doubles on demand. Neat. Ask kind of anything, right? Before class, after class, while watching the content, and get these really instructor-aligned answers. So this addresses a little bit of Megan's feeling of isolation, that if AI becomes a constant companion during prep and not just a quiz checker, there's a lot more engagement and ability to learn the content. Because I do agree, it's very hard to learn content just alone. And I remember, like, even in high school when teachers would assign us, like, you know, even math that we hadn't covered fully the day before, like, just try these on your own. Like, I didn't know what to do. And like just looking at a textbook didn't always explain everything.
Right. And what we know about these AI systems is that they can meet the student where they're at. So wherever their background knowledge is or their expertise with the content or the skill, they can kind of meet them in that spot, which is one of her real significant concerns. I mean, this reminded me quite a bit of the Harvard study that we covered with Gregory Ketzen. This was a physics class, if I remember correctly. There was this huge headline about how like this AI tutor, which was really just a custom GPT using the ChatGPT platform, like did a 2x on achievement and engagement in this physics course. But I think at some level, it speaks to Megan's concern, right? So the AI tutor was, in this case, very effective and was more effective than a standard class. So, you know, the idea that the flipped classroom would leave students behind, in the case of the Harvard project, it didn't, because it kind of met students where they were. It's interesting because there was a double problem, not just the one that Megan observed. In the Harvard study, kids who were like super advanced, they got to the class time and they were like, whatever, like I've already mastered this content. And kids who were super far behind really didn't understand what was going on. And what they found in the study is that kids who have strong background knowledge, you know, would in fact be engaged because they had a tool that would meet them where they were. And students who didn't have the background knowledge to keep up were able to kind of get this leg up on the content. So the AI tutor was supportive in the difference depending wherever it really was. And so I think this would very much address the kind of needs that Megan had. It'd be fun if we only do our interviews with people kind of in person. But Megan, if you're in the Northwest Connecticut, like come talk and we'll brainstorm around this.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, AI can do more than answer questions, and so it can reshape how students interact with the video lecture. Tools like ChatGPT can summarize long videos, translate complex concepts into something easier to understand. They can create the flashcards or quizzes, and this will also shift the students from this passive act of just watching the video and maybe answering a few questions to really being something more active, which is what Megan wanted. We just need more than watching videos alone, is what she says.
Yeah. It's funny because it doesn't have to necessarily even be a whole like full-blown AI tutoring system. The ability, and I noticed Gemini is doing this really well, so the ability to take a video of any length and put it into Gemini and say, hey, help me make a study, practice questions around this, or role play for me to help me check my understanding. It does a great job like transcribing the video. I did notice that Magic School that was one of my favorite early Magic School wins. You could drop any video, like a YouTube video, into Magic School and it would create like a study guide and a set of notes. And now when you do that, it pops up and goes, this feature is no longer available. You need to go get a transcript of the video and then bring it over. And I think it's because Google was like, whoa, hang on a second. Like, this YouTube stuff is Google stuff. And now,
so they don't want people stealing their stuff. Interesting.
You're feeling some irony here.
Interesting.
All right. So let's kind of round out the full picture here. So, what if AI tools could be used to detect when kids are confused in real time, help them, in fact, not just transcribe the video and give them practice questions, but rewatch a section, pause, skip ahead. We're not too far from that camera coming on too. And so the ability to see visually, I know there's a number of Chinese AI ed tech companies that are like, I can watch the kid's face at home and go, Johnny seems a little confused here. Let's reinforce that content. So
I do not want somebody watching me when I am studying.
Well, it's because you always look so deeply engaged. They'd be like, Dr. Ratty is killing it.
No, they'd be like, this lady knits all the time. How does she learn anything? But I learn better when I'm knitting.
Yeah, it's you're kinesthetically engaged. Actually, Conmigo, there's the idea that teachers could have a dashboard and it could flag when kids are struggling, and professors in that flipped classroom context could have better awareness. But actually, School AI, Magic School, Conmigo all have those features now. So I don't think it's really about scrapping the flipped classroom. It's about how do we supercharge and align the flipped classroom and use AI as it's like basically get rid of the video and bring AI predominantly into the role that the video played. And in my magical world, when your 3D avatar pops off your phone, it's like, hey, Dr. Rad, I see you're knitting. Let's work on this concept together.
Right. I mean, imagine if your homework was instead of go watch this video, go engage with this chatbot for 15 minutes. And the chatbot had already been trained on what it wants to ask the student, right? So like your task is to engage with the chatbot for 15 minutes.
Or yes, it could be a chatbot, then maybe it's a voice model, maybe it's an interactive. You and I have been looking at this really cool Speakology
that's
tool,
a really cool tool.
Which is a
for
foreign language fluency practice, and there's this avatar on the screen.
I think it's only Spanish, so teachers of other languages don't get too excited yet.
But it's a great example of, what if that is the outside of class piece? And listen, there's an equity issue, there's a broadband issue, there's a tech access issue,
right.
But we have lots of schools that work in long blocks and could easily have some of this kind of like flipping, whether, you're working with Speakology and then we get together as a class and we practice that skill with no technology in sight. It seems there's like a lot of power here. We have avoided talking in depth about the 2-hour learning model, but that's just another variation of the theme of using AI and then taking that knowledge and apply it in a real world context. So there may be a little nugget there that we want to explore. We'll come back to it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right, Matt, now it's time for this week's Bright Bite, where we highlight the use of AI in ways that make a positive impact on our culture, society, economy, environment, and more. So this week, we're talking about AI-driven weather prediction breakthroughs. This is from The Guardian in the UK from March 20th, 2025. So Aardvark Weather is a new AI model, and it can generate accurate forecasts locally on a desktop computer, eliminating the need for expensive supercomputers. So it is trained on global data from satellites and weather stations and balloons, and the AI replaces traditional simulation methods, running tens of times faster and using thousands of times less computing power.
Yeah, speaking of equity, right? That's the whole purpose of this Aardvark thing, is that there are very good AI prediction models. Google's come up with a new one that's, using a lot of compute to do weather prediction. But what Aardvark is doing is localizing this. So this was developed by Cambridge at the Alan Turing Institute, along with Microsoft Research and some other partners. And it enables anyone from a small farm in Africa to an emergency planner in a remote region to generate high-quality, hyper-local forecast, right? So it's still in research, but this signals a major step forward in accessibility and democratizing, really life-saving weather prediction, all with the support of AI. And this is cool. And honestly, Liz, it is not hard week after week after week to find a couple bright bites. We're doing one a week, but in the rundown notes that we share, there's at least 1, 2, or 3. So we're excited to keep reporting these stories, and let's just share a little good news. It feels like every now and then, maybe today, we need a little good news.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dr. Redding, nice to have our technology working, we think.
We hope.
We hope. Oh, we should note real quickly that there'll be a small mix in the schedule over the next few weeks because Liz is, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, globetrotting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Off to Ireland I go on a knitting tour.
Oh, my goodness. Who would have predicted? So, yes. The loyal listeners of ChatEDU will notice that Matt Mervis doesn't go anywhere more exciting to whatever the keynote. And I love going out and doing keynotes. So wherever it takes us, to Michigan or Florida, you and I are going to Oregon in a week.
So excited.
Not a week, in a little while, but so great. But in the meantime, Liz will be away. So I have a few guests coming into the studio, and we're looking forward to those conversations. And then Liz, you'll be back with us when? When are you going to be back? June?
No, it's a week.
Okay.
1 week that you have to record without me. I know you're heartbroken.
Oh, well. Okay. So that lead up all seemed a little bit more dramatic.
Yeah.
You must be going away again, though.
No, you're just dramatic.
Okay. Well, Liz, then that means it must be time to
roll the credits. As always, we'd love to hear what you think. So please let us know at chatedu@edadvance.org. That's EDADVANCE.org. And also rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you are using. ChatEDU is brought to you by EdAdvance, the nonprofit regional education service center in Litchfield, Connecticut. This episode of ChatEDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. ChatEDU is recorded, edited, and produced by Andre Angelo and Justin Pasco, whose dedication and expertise bring our discussions to life. ChatEDU's executive producer is the multi-talented rock star Cameron Audia. Additionally, we are grateful for the support of our colleague Gary Robinson, and we appreciate his time and talents. And of course, a big ChatEDU shout out to our fearless leader and executive director, Jonathan Costa, for inspiring the pod. And finally, a heartfelt thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey exploring the thoughtful and innovative integration of AI in education.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Costa, and I am the executive director at EdAdvance, and I want you to know how much we appreciate our listeners. If you enjoyed the podcast, feel free to explore EdAdvance's other AI services, which include customized professional learning of all kinds, conferences, and our micro-credential co-sponsored by the Southern Connecticut State University Office of Workforce and Lifelong Learning. Just visit skills21.org/AI to learn more. That's all for now, and thank you again for listening to ChatEDU.